Welcome back to The Deep Dive, the show where we shortcut you to being well-informed on the cutting edge of AI research. Today we're tackling a challenge that I think keeps a lot of AI researchers and ML engineers up at night. How do we make large language models not just smarter at complex reasoning, but also, significantly more efficient and stable during training?
Yeah, it's a big one. Because let's be honest, the current state of reinforcement learning for LLMs, it often means sky-high costs and, well, frustratingly limited exploration sometimes.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Today, we're diving into a fascinating new paper. It's titled TreePO, Bridging the Gap of Policy Optimization and Efficacy and Inference Efficiency with Heuristic Tree-Based Modeling. Quite a mouthful.
Yeah, it is. But it's groundbreaking stuff.
Yeah.
It comes from researchers at ByteDance Seed, MAP, and the University of Manchester. And it offers a really fresh perspective on optimizing LLM training.
So our mission for this deep dive, explore how TreePO redefines how these LLMs learn complex reasoning. We want to look at how it addresses core limitations, things like computational costs, exploration, credit assignment.
Right, and ultimately delivering efficiency. Ideally, without compromising the actual performance. That's the dream.
Okay, so for the quick headline, the 1-minute summary for you listening, here's what TreePO brings to the table. The core problem it solves, that's a big one. Current reinforcement learning methods for LLMs, especially for that complex reasoning stuff, they're often hobbled by really expensive on-policy rollouts.
And limited exploration, inefficient computation.
Yeah.
It's tough. Plus, you get these sparse rewards, like feedback way late in the game, which makes credit assignment a nightmare. Figuring out what actually worked, really hard.
So TreePO's core innovation is to completely reframe sequence generation. Instead of those linear independent paths we usually see, it treats it as a sophisticated, self-guided, tree-structured searching process. That sounds like a fundamental shift.
It really is a totally different way of thinking about it.
And how does it work? Well, TreePO leverages two main clever mechanisms. First, there's a segment-wise sampling algorithm.
Right. Think of it like decoding the LLM's response, not token by token, but in these short fixed-length segments.
Which lets it dynamically fork new branches, explore different ideas based on uncertainty, and crucially, prune away dead-end paths quickly.
Exactly. Saves a lot of wasted effort.
Yeah.
And second, it uses a unique tree-based advantage estimation. That's basically how it calculates rewards.
And it considers both the big picture, the whole tree, and the local impact of each segment.
Precisely. It's hierarchical.
The free lunch benefits they report are pretty remarkable. Empirically, TreePO significantly cuts GPU hours for sampling. We're talking anywhere from 22% up to 43% savings.
Yeah, and it cuts trajectory level compute by up to 40%, token level compute by 35%. That's huge.
All while maintaining or even enhancing exploration diversity and improving training stability and performance on reasoning benchmarks.
It really reveals a practical path forward, scaling RL-based post-training with fewer samples, less compute.
And here's a key bit. Even from a base model, without prior supervised fine-tuning.
That's a big deal. It lowers the barrier significantly.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, I think. We've seen RL do amazing things for LLMs, right? Especially with reasoning tasks. But what are the actual hurdles? Why is it so computationally taxing and, well, often a bit messy?
What's fascinating here is that the challenges are deeply rooted in how LLM generation actually works. We're talking about two really long-standing constraints.
Okay.
Effective exploration, finding diverse responses, and efficient exploitation of feedback, actually learning from the rewards you get.
Right.
LLMs often generate thousands, literally thousands of tokens before they get a single sparse reward signal back.
Wow, so it's hard to explore diverse paths or even know which specific tokens were good or bad.
Exactly. It's incredibly hard. Like trying to teach someone to navigate a maze, but only telling them good job or nope, right at the very end. You have no idea which turns were right or wrong along the way.
And computationally, standard RL sounds, well, pretty wasteful.
Oh, precisely. Traditional methods generate multiple independent trajectories, completely separate paths.
Which means redundant computation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Redundant computation of common prefixes. Those initial steps in reasoning, they get recalculated over and over for different potential answers.
Leading to inefficient use of that key value cache, the KV cache.
You got it. It's just inefficient. Now, things like Monte Carlo tree search, MCTS, they offer the promise of tree structures and maybe stopping bad paths early. But they're often too slow, too inefficient for LLM inference because they tend to roll out paths sequentially.
Okay.
What really seems to have inspired this paper, though, is this empirical observation. Even when generating stochastically, with some randomness, LLMs frequently reproduce extensive overlapping reasoning segments, those common prefixes we talked about. They happen a lot naturally.
So if you actually visualize the paths an LLM explores, it kind of naturally forms a tree anyway.
Exactly. It presents this huge opportunity for efficiency. If we could just reuse those common parts instead of recalculating them.
Okay, so if the problem lies in this linear, redundant way current rollouts work, TreePO's big idea is, let's just make the entire sequence generation process tree structured from the start. How does that shift actually lead to better performance and efficiency?
Well, stepping back to the bigger picture, TreePO basically replaces those inefficient independent rollouts with a computationally efficient and algorithmically flexible tree search.
Okay.
By explicitly building the rollout as a tree, it maximizes the reuse of those shared prefixes. It amortizes the computation cost across branches.
And helps with that credit assignment problem too.
Yes, it enables a much more principled way to assign credit. If you look at their figure 1, you can sort of visualize it. It contrasts TreePO's segment-based branching, where it smartly forks new paths, with the traditional method, which looks more like just sampling full separate lines down the page.
Right, TreePO looks much more like a branching decision process.
Exactly. It's a fundamentally different structure for generating responses. A whole new way of thinking about it, really.
And they highlight 3 core contributions that make this work. Let's maybe unpack the first one. Their novel, segment-wise sampling algorithm.
Right. This algorithm really reimagines the whole sampling process. So instead of independent token-level decoding for the entire trajectory, TreePO uses this hybrid approach. It does segment-level tree searching, but combines it with token-level decoding within each segment.
Okay, so segments, like chunks of text.
Kind of. Each segment has a maximum length, let's call it OL. And the generation within that segment stops if it hits that limit, or if it meets some early stop criteria, like maybe it detects a pattern that looks like flawed reasoning, a repetitive loop or something.
Interesting. So it's not just saving computation, it's being smarter about where it spends its compute budget.
Exactly.
So it's not just growing one long branch then, but it's strategically forking off new ones to explore different possibilities.
Precisely. TreePO introduces branching. It forks the prompt, say, B times before starting the inference for that segment. And this B value, the number of branches, it's calculated dynamically.
So it adapts.
Yeah, it lets the model explore multiple continuations from that shared starting point, that shared prefix. And to make sure the search is balanced, they have these smart strategies, like branching budget transfer.
What's that do?
If one path stops early, maybe it hit an error or finished, its remaining budget for generating gets reassigned to the paths that are still active and look promising.
Clever. Keep the exploration going where it matters.
Right. And they also have depth-first search fallback.
Yeah.
That only kicks in if a query, runs out of active paths, but hasn't generated enough total trajectories yet.
Yeah.
It stops the model from quitting too early on complex reasoning tasks that just need more steps.
So it's a very intelligent way to manage that exploration budget.
Definitely.
And you mentioned heuristic sampling. That adds more control without extra cost. Sounds like a free win.
It kind of is. Simple heuristics, like just detecting repetitive substrings, when the model starts mumbling, can prune those branches early, saves compute. And more advanced controls can use the log probabilities, information you get anyway from the token level decoding.
Right, that's already there.
Exactly. Use that to steer the sampling process, maybe prioritize more likely paths or explore less likely ones without adding any delays or pipeline bubbles.
Yeah.
It's about squeezing more value from the information you inherently have.
Okay, so the segment-wise sampling creates these rich, tree-structured rollouts, much more efficient. But the big challenge in RL, it always comes back to credit assignment, right? How does TreePO use this new tree structure to actually distribute the rewards more precisely? How does it tackle that problem?
Yeah, that's a crucial question. I mean, how do you get accurate feedback when even responses generated in parallel might look pretty similar, sort of homogeneous at the whole sequence level?
Right.
TreePO's tree structure, it naturally helps with a more granular advantage estimation. It models entire subtrees like whole branches of reasoning as coherent subgroups.
Not just single steps.
No, whole subgroups. And then it calculates a robust relative advantage based on the collective outcomes of all the descendant paths within that subgroup.
So it's comparing branches against each other within the same exploration tree.
Kind of, yeah. It's a much richer way to understand what actually contributed to a positive or negative final outcome.
So it's not just looking at a simple parent-child relationship for rewards, but the broader context of an entire branch may be multiple steps down.
Precisely. Imagine, like they show in Figure 3, a query yields maybe 8 potential reasoning trajectories, 8 leaves on the tree. A node deep inside that tree can calculate its own subgroup advantage based on just its descendants.
Okay.
And then these subgroup advantages get aggregated up the tree, often just by averaging them, and then they're normalized.
Normalization is important for stability, I guess.
Absolutely. And what really makes TREPO's advantage estimation robust and different from many other methods is how it intelligently incorporates global variance normalization across the entire batch or tree.
Okay, why is that so key?
Well, it's not just a mathematical detail. It's what ensures the feedback signal stays stable and effective, even when you have very diverse outcomes across different subgroups. Some might be great, some terrible global normalization helps keep the learning signal meaningful.
And a really significant point you mentioned earlier, for people training new models, it supports RL0. That sounds like a huge leap.
It is, yes. Its design is proven feasible for training directly from a base model.
No SFT needed.
Right. No need for prior supervised fine-tuning, or SFT. It can elicit reasoning capabilities straight from the base model, which is unlike many of its peers.
And SFT usually requires a ton of carefully curated data to get the model going in the right direction.
Right, exactly. So skipping that step can dramatically lower the barrier to entry, the cost and effort, for training these advanced LLMs on reasoning tasks.
Okay, so the theory sounds really solid. Clever sampling, smart reward distribution. But what about the real-world results? Did TREPO actually deliver on this promise of efficiency and performance?
Empirically, yeah, the validation looks strong. They did their training on Qwen 2.57b base models, using datasets like Math and DeepScaler.
Standard stuff.
Right, and evaluated on tough benchmarks, AME, AMC, Minerva, Olympia Bench. The results, you can see them in Table 1 and Figure 1, they're quite compelling.
Looking at Table 1 here, just adding TreePO sampling to an existing model, GRPO I think it was, it boosted overall accuracy from about 46.6% to over 54.6%. That's a substantial jump just from changing the sampling.
It really is. It immediately highlights how much the structure of the exploration matters. Just making those rollouts more efficient, less redundant via the tree-based sampling gives a huge boost.
Yeah.
And Figure 1 backs this up. It shows that GRPO with 3PO sampling, that's the orange line, is significantly more stable during training compared to the vanilla GRPO blue line.
Okay. And then when they add the TreePO advantage estimator as well.
Right. When the full TreePO system is in place, especially with a setting they call more init divergence, the overall accuracy hits 58.21%.
Yeah.
And that green line on the chart, it shows the most stable and consistently high-performing training trajectory.
So better results and more stable training. That's what everyone wants.
Pretty much, yeah.
And the efficiency gains. Equally impressive, you said.
Absolutely. Table 2 lays out the computational savings. Tree-based sampling cut GPU hours by anywhere from 12% up to 43%, depending on the specific configuration.
43%, that's massive.
It is. And for models that were already trained, just applying TreePO sampling for inference achieved up to a 40% reduction in trajectory-level compute and 35% in token-level compute.
So it genuinely offers this free lunch they talk about, inference efficiency, just from structuring the search better.
It really seems to. It paves a very practical path towards scaling up RL, using fewer samples and less compute. That makes bigger, better reasoning models more feasible.
The paper then takes us deeper, right? With a series of research questions, ablation studies, really dissecting how the different design choices impact TREPO. Let's maybe start with RQ1, the sampling efficiency analysis.
Right. They did this offline efficiency analysis running tests on different Qwen 2.5 variants, and they found tree-based sampling consistently gave, on average, like 40% more trajectories per second TrajPS and 30% more tokens per second token PS.
Compared to conventional sampling?
Yeah, across different setups. And the gain really comes from exploiting those shared prefixes we talked about and enabling more parallel decoding within the tree structure.
It's like having multiple conversations at once, but you only need to say the beginning part once.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
And it sounds like there's a sweet spot, though, for tree depth and segment length. It's not just deeper is always better.
Precisely. Figure 4 illustrates this really well.
Okay.
Both token PS and TrajPS, they peak at intermediate depth segment combinations.
Not the deepest or the shallowest.
Right. For example, the Qwen 2.57b instruct model peaked at depth 28, while the mass variant peaked at depth 14.
Yeah.
It's model specific.
Why the difference?
Well, there's a trade-off. The initial pre-filling stage benefits from longer segments, which means shallower trees because that reduces recomputation. But the actual decoding stage prefers deeper trees with more branches because that allows for more parallelism.
So the optimal point is balancing those two opposing effects.
Exactly. And that balance point depends on the specific model architecture and maybe the task.
Okay. How about just scaling the number of rollouts? Throwing more compute at it. Does that always work with TreePO?
Well, our first instinct is often just more compute, isn't it? But Figure 5 shows it's nuanced.
Okay.
For some models, like Qwen 2.57b Instruct, they saw nearly linear growth in tokens and trajectories per second as rollouts increased. It basically doubled the baseline speed. Pretty good.
What?
But for the Qwen 2.5 Math 7b model, the performance was non-monotonic. It actually peaked around 16 rollouts and then declined.
Declined. Why would it get slower with more rollouts?
It indicates that while more rollouts definitely boost parallelism, if you create too much divergence, too many different branches exploring wildly different things, it can lead to KV cache fragmentation.
The memory gets messy.
Right. Increased memory overhead, less efficient cache use. So there's an optimum number of rollouts that depends on the model and the workload. More isn't always better. It's a reminder that the hardware and system architecture always play a part.
Makes sense. They also dug into the nuances of their advantage estimation, right? RQ2.
Right.
What did they find about different ways to aggregate those subgroup rewards?
Yeah, Figure 6 is insightful here. They compared simple averaging across the subgroups versus weighting the average by the size of the subgroup, how many paths were in it.
Okay, what worked better?
Interestingly, simple averaging led to higher accuracy on both the math and AIM benchmarks. And it also resulted in lower, more stable entropy during training.
Why would weighting by size be worse? Seems like bigger groups should have more influence.
Well, the thinking is that size weighting might overemphasize large subgroups, which could potentially represent easier or more common reasoning paths.
So it dilutes the signal.
Exactly. It might dilute the signal from smaller, perhaps more informative subgroups that explored harder or more novel paths. It's a subtle but really critical distinction in how you interpret the feedback from the tree.
And what about this naive rejection? Rejecting subgroups where all paths failed or all succeeded. That sounds like it might clean up the signal, but you said it hurt performance.
Yeah, counterintuitive, right? Rejecting those all positive or all negative subgroups, kind of like some other methods do, it actually biased the feedback signal and weakened the learning process.
Leading to lower accuracy and longer generations.
Yes. It turns out those extreme subgroups, where everything went right or everything went wrong, are actually crucial for calibrating the decision margins. Removing them strips away these high signal cases.
So you need to see the extremes to understand the middle ground properly.
It seems so, yeah. Sometimes you learn the most from spectacular failures or successes.
What about the impact of the root group advantage term, that very top-level reward signal for the whole tree?
Also interesting, removing that root group term entirely, it didn't really degrade performance significantly.
Really?
Yeah. It suggests that the integrated signals from all the subgroups deeper in the tree can effectively approximate that full group optimization signal.
So maybe some redundancy there.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It offers a promising direction for analyzing credit assignment redundancy. Maybe a lot of the heavy lifting is actually happening deeper down in the branches.
And finally, on the advantage estimation, the importance of token alignment for that fallback mechanism.
Oh, this was critical. When they try to misalign fallback, where the segments had the right abstract tree structure, but weren't precisely aligned token by token with the actual generation history.
What happened?
A significant drop in amnesty accuracy and a sharp rise in the length of the generated responses. It really highlights that having precise token-aligned segments is critical for stable optimization and getting the model to stop accurately.
So the little details matter, precision at every step.
Absolutely. Especially in these complex systems.
Okay, moving on. RQ3 looked at the segment budget, right? How that combination of segment length and tree depth affects training stability and convergence. What's the optimal balance they found there?
So under one of their settings, the group size weighted advantage 1, a specific configuration 14 by 512, meaning depth 14 with segments of length 512, emerged as the sweet spot.
That achieved the highest final accuracy on math and AIM.
Yes, and they observed that deeper trees with moderate segment lengths like 14 by 512 or 28 by 256 generally provided stronger credit assignment compared to very shallow trees with extremely long segments like 7 by 124.
Those lagged behind.
Yeah, especially on the AIM benchmark. It really underlines again that there seems to be an optimal structure for extracting the most effective feedback from these rollouts. Not too deep, not too shallow.
And you mentioned earlier there's a coupling between accuracy and response length.
Indeed. that best-performing 14 by 512 setting. It also drove the largest growth in the length of the responses, and also higher entropy, meaning more exploration.
So for online TreePO during training, better accuracy often comes with more exploration and longer reasoning traces.
It suggests that, yeah, shorter traces might be trading off some accuracy for brevity. It's a clear trade-off you need to consider. Depending on your application, do you need the best possible answer, even if it takes longer, or is speed more critical?
Right. Okay, RQ4 and 5 get into probability-based branching and compute scaling. Given that TreePO has this segment-level control, did they find ways to improve branching using probabilities, like guiding the exploration based on how likely paths seem? Sounds like a good idea.
Well, Figure 8 reveals something really crucial and maybe counterintuitive for anyone working with RL.
Okay.
Using static heuristic controls like low prob encourage, giving more budget to less likely paths to force exploration, or high prob encourage focusing budget on more likely paths.
Yep.
Both of them actually underperformed the baseline TREPO without these explicit probability controls.
Both. Even forcing exploration into less likely areas hurt.
Surprisingly, yes. Low prob encourage actually yielded the lowest accuracy, the highest entropy, and the longest responses.
Why would forcing exploration be bad? Isn't that the goal sometimes?
The degradation seems linked to forcing the model into less efficient and less coherent search trajectories. Just because a path is unlikely doesn't mean exploring it is helpful. It might just be, well, a bad path.
So the key takeaway is that simply increasing exploration diversity doesn't automatically mean better task performance.
Exactly. That's the striking observation here. Artificially inflating entropy, which you might think increases exploration, did not translate into better results.
So exploration needs to be meaningful, not just diverse.
That seems to be the lesson. The baseline TREPO, with its more moderate, naturally arising entropy, maintained a better intrinsic balance between exploration and exploitation. It explored, but in ways that were still likely grounded in the model's learned knowledge.
Fascinating. Okay, finally, let's look at how TreePO scales with compute. Does it follow conventional patterns? RQ5.
This is where it gets really interesting, especially for deployment. Figure 9 shows a critical distinction from typical sequential sampling.
How so?
Sequential sampling usually traces a single curve, right? Performance goes up as you add more compute, maybe plateaus eventually. But TREPO, it generates a whole family of scaling curves.
A family. What determines the different curves?
Each curve corresponds to a different internal search strategy, which they control with something called the tree divergence factor. Basically how widely the tree branches out. D248 in their tests.
So you can choose how broad your search is within TreePO.
Precisely. And this demonstrates a really flexible compute-optimal inference capability.
Meaning you can tailor your TreePO strategy based on how much compute you actually have available. That sounds like a game changer for deployment decisions.
Exactly that. At lower compute budgets, a smaller divergence factor like D2 turns out to be more efficient. It gives you the best bang for your buck. But as your compute budget increases, wider search strategies like D4 and then D8 become superior. D8 achieved the highest peak performance overall when they could afford the compute.
So you can pick the optimal tree structure to maximize performance for whatever computational constraint you're working under. That's powerful.
It really is. Instead of just scaling the number of independent samples, you're tuning the internal structure of the search itself to match your budget. For anyone deploying LLMs in real-world scenarios where compute varies, that's incredibly useful.
So let's pull back a bit, looking at how this fits into the wider research landscape. How does TreePO really stand out among all the other efforts trying to make LLM training more efficient and effective?
Well, TreePO definitely meaningfully advances the field. It cleverly integrates insights from lots of existing work-efficient sampling techniques like batching, KV cache reuse, parallel decoding.
Right, building on what's known.
Yes, and also from segment-level or tree search methods like TreeRL or SPO. But it crucially differentiates itself in a few ways, like its self-guided rollout mechanism, that dynamic branching and pruning. Also, its novel hierarchical advantage estimator that's pretty unique.
And the RL0 capability.
And the big one, yes, its capability to train effectively right from base models without needing that initial supervised fine-tuning.
Which avoids limitations of some prior work.
Exactly. Some methods might lose long-range information because of segmentation, or they rely heavily on already having a pre-aligned SFT model to start with. TreePO seems to avoid those pitfalls, making it a more robust and versatile solution overall, potentially paving the way for the future.
So wrapping things up, what does this all mean for you listening, whether you're actually building the next generation of LLMs or just trying to stay plugged into the cutting edge?
Well, I think TreePO offers a really robust, practical framework. It directly tackles those inherent problems. The computational inefficiency, the exploration instability you often get when training LLMs for complex reasoning.
By rethinking the whole rollout process.
Right. By reformulating those on-policy rollouts as this segment-based tree search, combined with that clever hierarchical advantage estimator, it delivers really significant cost reductions.
Well, boosting stability and performance.
Exactly. Better stability, strong performance. It's not just, an incremental tweak. It feels more like a fundamental shift in how we approach RL for these large models. It makes advanced reasoning potentially more accessible, less resource-intensive to achieve.
And thinking about the future then, what sort of promising avenues does TreePO open up? Where could this lead?
The structural modeling, the efficiency gains, they're particularly exciting for scaling reinforcement learning to even more complex, maybe longer horizon tasks.
Like what?
Well, imagine multi-turn dialogue systems that need to maintain coherence over really extended interactions, or advanced agents that need to use tools effectively, or even sophisticated multi-agent systems where coordination is key.
TreePO could provide a more manageable foundation for those.
Exactly. A more manageable and scalable foundation for tackling those really hard challenges, pushing the boundaries of what we can currently do with LLMs.
Okay, let's leave our listeners with a final provocative thought then.
All right. Considering TreePO's ability to offer this flexible, compute-optimal inference where you can choose the tree structure based on your budget, how might this paradigm shift influence not just how we train LLMs, but also how we actually design and deploy them in real-time decision-making scenarios? Situations where every computational cycle, every decision path taken truly counts. What new possibilities does that unlock?